Hey everybody, my name is Andres,
I'm Scott.
I'm Abe.
and this is Between Two Stands, a classical musicians podcast about classical music. And we have a very, very exciting guest today.
I have to say, as a brass player, this is one of the most fun things I've gotten to do, and one of the most privileged experiences I think I've ever felt in getting to meet this person.
Yeah, I could have just listened to him tell stories all day,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and the
we
fact that
had
he
the
had
pleasure of,
and just the fact that he had experiences talking to some of the most legendary cellists,
yeah,
was I'm just incredible. You'd never think about that. I wouldn't
yeah.
have thought about it.
We should probably tell everyone who this is
Who
now.
is it?
It is Wynton Marsalis.
Oh man,
And
we need a drum roll in that. Let's see if
yeah,
we
we
can
need a
add
drum
that.
roll.
Add that in post. Cut that in.
Yeah. But no, yeah, it's true.
Andres can
It was
record it.
like, yeah, I'll record it. I got it.
Wake up your baby.
Yeah, no, it was really a special interview. I mean, the guy is like traversed so many genres, like he's kind of been around and met so many people, been influenced and had been influenced by so many eras of music and genres of music that it's kind of like a once in a lifetime opportunity to talk to somebody like that, because he just
Absolutely.
has stories from people that aren't here anymore, and it's just so cool to give life to those people, through stories, and he's an amazing storyteller.
Yeah. Well, and his mastery of the instrument and has kind of spread across every genre, and now he's writing all of this music that we're performing,
Yeah,
and
And recording.
recording.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So super excited about this. So without further ado, let's get Wynton on here. Wynton Marsalis, thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Yes, thank you.
Man, it's my pleasure. It's great to see y'all.
it's really
You
great
know?
to see you. So this is like such an honor, but we have a tradition on the show where we ask all the guests the same first question, which is, what's on your stand right now? So what is it you're working on?
I just actually just finished working on a fanfare. So the horn has 6 horns. So I got a lot of horn parts in it.
Nice.
So,
Is it for anything? Like, is it to introduce anything?
well, no, it can introduce whatever you wanted to introduce. It's a fanfare,
Yeah.
You know how the French horn, old left-handed French horns. So
Oh yeah.
that's
Well, I
why-
saw you playing one of those.
Man,
with
forgive me.
you did a great job. You did a great job. This is with Sarah Willis.
Forgive me, Sarah got me to do that, man. Don't hold that against me. I didn't want to do it. I mean, I love her so much, I did it. But I'm an old sad French horn. I played French horn in high school, and believe me, the horn ran me off of it.
Oh, I understand. It's fixing to do that to me too. So this fanfare, it's for 6 horns?
Well, it's 6 horns, full brass section. 4
Oh.
trombones, 4 trumpets, 6 horns, tuba, and percussion. Four percussion.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
awesome.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. It's great. It may be great as an idea. I don't know about how it sounds.
Sure, it'll sound great.
So when starting in the beginning, first of all, like, just an illustrious career, and just there's so many things to pull from, for this interview. But I just was curious. You kind of started your career, with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, and just kind of wanted to know, what did you learn about yourself, and your playing during that time with them? How was that, like, important to you?
Man, I mean, I didn't really know how to play. We were playing more like funk and pop music. And I wanted to learn how to play, but there was no bands to learn how to play. So a friend of mine who was actually a percussionist, Akita Tana, we had met at Tanglewood. That summer, I was 17, he was 10 years older than me. And he was going to New York. So we decided, okay, let's be roommates. And he was playing with the Heath brothers. So we would sit up. He was Japanese, so it's the first time I ever had like sushi. You know, I'm saying, man, y'all eat fish. But he was my man. He had a big record collection. We sit up and listen to all these old great records of Joe Henderson and Woody Shaw and all, you know, from all eras. It wasn't like they were older records, but we would sit up and look at Twilight Zone at 1 o'clock in the morning. We had a really small TV, and he was saying, man, if you want to learn how to play, you have to play with Art Blakey. He's the only person hiring younger cats. So I was like, man, I got to figure out how to get in Art Blakey's band to learn how to play jazz. I mean, I was from New Orleans and my daddy is a jazz musician. I had played, but I still had a long way to go, man. He knew James Williams, the piano player. And he went to James one night. It was in the winter of New York in 1979, maybe. Man, I still had an army jacket. I was freezing. I'm coming from the South. And he said, man, let this guy play. And then James talked to Art. We called Art Blakey. We always called him Boo. He said, Boo, let this dude play. They say he can play from New Orleans. So Boo knew about my dad. He said, okay. I played, and they played a song called Along Came Betty. Man, I couldn't play. The song changes keys every measure. So I'm used to playing on pentatonic scales. Man, I sounded so bad. I didn't want to stop playing because, you know, when you don't sound good, even the silence is sad. But I played, man. I finished it. And Art Blakey looked at me and he said, you're sad. He had a zip, you're sad. He said, you're sad. But he said, it's okay. You know, we're playing in Boston next week. So, you know, I went wherever. I followed him to Boston, man. And then it started kind of me having an opportunity. The great trumpet player was playing with them at that time, Valery Ponomarev. He's from Russia. And then we had a big band that summer, 1980. We went out with me and my brother Branford and the Eubanks brothers, Kevin and what about who else was in it? Well, anyway, it was all of us, you know. Yeah. And we went out and we started playing Robin and Kevin. I can think about Robin because he beat me in our last basketball game. That's why I forgot his name briefly.
Now you want to forget him.
Yeah, oh man, yeah, trombone players, you know, the horns and trumpet got to stick together.
Yeah.
So, but I learned all kind of stuff from Art Blakey, man, about life. You know, it was a struggle out there working. Wasn't making no money, but it was. I learned about playing and just the integrity of the man, and he was wild, man. You'd have to dedicate volumes of a book about him, just his genius, how much integrity he had, and all the demons he had too. He struggled, but he didn't struggle with integrity.
Yeah, that seems like a good mentor, you know, for that time.
For that kind of stuff, you had to know what you wanted to be mentored in. But you know, I was coming from the jazz tradition, so it was I love this man absolutely. Like just the feeling I have for him is not. I don't know what to say about it.
You know, one of the topics that we've come across, you know, we've interviewed a few people like Terrence Blanchard and Jeff Scott mentioned this in an interview, and a couple others about the training of a jazz musician and how there's the formal training of musicians, especially with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. You know, there's this kind of pathway, and how for musicians that don't have that institution, the way you're trained is so different. And it just seems like you had at least a generous person there to help you out. So I have another question, which is, with all the teaching and collaborations and performing and everything and compositions, of course, that you've done, is there any particular project that you're really proud of, or maybe one in a few different aspects?
You know, all of them, man. I don't really. I've been blessed to work with great musicians. I'm gonna play with great musicians tonight. I always loved the musicians everywhere I played. It didn't make a difference of the idiom of music. You know, I had a lot of heroes when I was growing up that played a lot of different styles of music. And they were always, even the ones that weren't nice, I could understand. You know, they were dealing with what they were dealing with. But I've collaborated with so many different types of people, from Sonny Rollins to Odada's a group of African drummers, the master Yakub Adi, he's passed away, from Ghana. I learned a lot from that man. took 10 years to write a piece with him just to understand their music. It was very complex from a spiritual standpoint, but he was a great teacher. They called him Numway, which meant like mentor teacher. So I always called him Numway or Koob. And he was full of kernels. He would always say something that was funny to you. Like he told me once, "This is a royal rhythm." I said, "Man, I'm from New Orleans. It don't sound royal to me." "That is why you will never play it correctly." So it was always, that kind of teaching to my my high school trumpet teacher. And playing with musicians, I always got played with great Willie Nelson, just to play with him and to be around him. And we went to Ray Charles' funeral together. I met him on the road. I just saw his bus. I could go on and on with stories, of great musicians of different idioms and styles and types.
Oh, please do. That'll make our show awesome.
Oh, man,
Yeah.
just there's so many, and all of that, just the kind of love and the depth of it. Willie, he's very political minded. He's very, very astute and unbelievably intelligent. Like sometimes people look at him, a red-haired stranger, the cowboy hat, and just the thing about musicians is just the depth of their intelligence of them. And when you really start to talk with them, and it doesn't matter, what idiom there. Kurt Mazur, conversation we had about being a Nazi soldier. When you get to very serious subjects, it's serious. And man, I learned more from him just telling me the truth about stuff, what it was like in Germany in 1941.
Yeah.
So what the truth of it is from his perspective, it wasn't propaganda. To Dizzy Gillespie, just what Dizzy would say about somebody like Louis Armstrong. He said he moved from where he lived to move around the corner from Louis Armstrong. Then he was Dizzy. He was in his 40s. You went to move around Louis Armstrong. He was like, man, I knew something like that would never happen again. There'd never be another person who walked this earth like this man. And I would go to his house every chance I had. In the stories, he would tell you the respect that you would see from a master like that to somebody like Louis Armstrong, and on and on. Maurice Andre. It goes on and on, man.
I want along those lines that I wanted to ask those guys you mentioned, Kurt Mazur, Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie. They're all like almost like mythological now, like they're on this like pedestal, and but you've had the opportunity to work with and see some of them and got to know them. Is there any like, I love hearing these anecdotes. Is there any one in particular that like was a that a funny moment, or is there like something that like blew your mind, or any of those guys that like that makes them more human?
Man, there's plenty of them. You just tell me, take me in the direction you want me to go, and I'll tell you a story. There's plenty of them.
Oh man, let's see here.
It doesn't make a difference. There's plenty of stories.
All right. Well, what about with Dizzy? Anything that sticks out to you?
Well, with Dizzy, we had the chance. We were developing jazz at Lincoln Center. I'd never heard of like institutions. I had my own band on the road. Mm-hmm. Man, I was making good money playing 200-something concerts a year, writing music, being like a kind of quintet in the style of all those kind of quintets. And then I had the thought of, let's put together a band of Duke Ellington musicians and ours. We had never played big band music like that. But damn, the next summer we walked in a room, I was 26, 27, and there was like Jimmy Hamilton and Britt Woodman. All these people played with Duke Ellington in the 50s, who I didn't even know if they were alive. And we put together a band of older people and younger people. Man, we didn't know how to play the music. They were cussing us out. They always saying we were playing too loud. We didn't, but what we learned was unbelievable. Man, I sat next to Joe Wilder, Marcus Belgrave, who had played in Ray Charles's band, Willie Cook, who played with Duke. Clark Terry came in and subbed. That was like my mentor from when I was in high school, on and on. And as the time passed, the older cats, stopped coming on the road, and the band started to change. And then I had reached a point where I had to determine, was I going to stop working like I was working and play with a big band? And I still was not sold on it. So I called Dizzy, and I talked with him, and I asked him about, what did he think I should do? And he said, well, to lose one's orchestral tradition should not be considered an achievement. So He was basically telling me, you need to try to figure out to keep the orchestra going. So that's how he would, just that one statement redirected what I was going to do. Because I wasn't going to go in the direction of a big band and institutions and all of that. It was too much. You can't do what you want to do. You work in a context with a board in a larger organization, and you have a lot of things to answer to. It's a lot less money, and it's a lot more headache. But, when he said that, I said, okay. And also, I wasn't comfortable doing things like asking people for money and all of that. I mean, I worked my whole life. So, right. But I learned, I went on his word. I understood what his, so that would be one example. John
really
Lewis,
profound, actually.
John Lewis, the great music director of the Modern Jazz Quartet. He was a big mentor to me. I would go to his house all the time. And he always had funny things he would say because people thought he was really straight, and he was straight. But I clown and joke around a lot. Then when I was younger, I really was doing it. So he was very straightforward. So he said, man, I was complaining to him about bad reviews I was always getting bad reviews, because it was like an attempt to try to kind of kill the forward motion of jazz at Lincoln Center. So I was like, man, these reviews. So he was listening to it very patiently. And at a certain point, he looked at me and he said, too much talk about oneself, even if it's too much talk about bad reviews of oneself, is a cloaked form of advanced egotism.
Yeah, that's good. That's funny.
Let's get to another subject, man. Let's play some music. So I called him one day. I said, you have any time? You have any time for me? He said, time for what? So he was kind of joking with me. He said, for you, I have some time. For the music, I have all the time in the world.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's
so
cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And I got plenty of them like that, man. I mean, because I was always with the great musicians, and they were always saying some kind of funny stuff.
At this point in your career, is there anyone that you feel like you're on stage with and you kind of like, man, I'm on the stage with this person. That's amazing. Are you ever starstruck, or is it kind of just you're in it?
It depends on it. Not really, man. I mean, it depends on if what are we playing? Like when I'm on the stage, I'm trying to play.
Yeah.
Like I don't have time to be looking around. Might be something for me, it's more like when I see figures that I love. Like maybe a week ago, I saw Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I went to his house to see him. That's still cool. Because I was 12 or 13. I was in a restaurant with John Matuzak. It's like athletic figures that I love. Dr. J, I played some ball with him. That kind of stuff.
Oh, man. Like, that is cool.
It takes you back to when you were a kid. And with musicians in the early years, all the ones that I knew, like if I would meet Miles or Dizzy or Freddie Hubbard, or the ones that trumpet players that I grew up loving, or McCoy Tyner or Elvin Jones. Yeah, I was always. But at this point, I don't not that much. I'm generally trying to figure out how to sound good.
Yeah.
That's a good aspiration.
Yeah,
maybe a lesson to me.
Man, that's you play horn, so you got a lot on your mind. You can miss more notes on the damn horn.
And I do.
You say you've learned how to embrace it. No, that horn is difficult, man.
Wynton, we're really excited for you to come to Detroit. So the first question about your time here, you've been all over the world, and what makes Detroit unique to you, and what's your fondest memory here?
Man, I started coming to Detroit in 1980 with Art Blakey at Baker's Keyboard Lounge. Oh, nice. And I used to go into schools and teach in a lot of different schools. A lot of the young musicians I met, jazz musicians, young, great musicians I met in Detroit, like now Rodney Whitaker was a great bass player. Ali Jackson, fantastic drummer. Marcus Belgrave, the trumpet player I was saying about, played Ray Charles, was a mentor and teacher in Detroit, like my father was in New Orleans. And I never forget a lot of funny stories in Detroit for me happened to be around basketball. So I played a lot of ball coming up. And Roy Brooks is a great drummer. And then I was maybe 21 or 22, and we played a game of ball outside of Kronk Gym. And I was thinking, man, this guy is 50-something. No way in the world is he. This is going to be a mercy killing. Man, you know, Roy Brooks is old behind.
He taught you a lesson?
It was more than a lesson. I mean, then I found out he was like, you know, all-world point guard or something in the 1950s or early 60s. In the 60s, man, he put it on me. So I always think about being, you know, at Crown. Then Tommy Hearns was just starting off, and Emmanuel Stewart was there. And I played with the Symphony, then with the Detroit Symphony. I think I played the high note of humble. Mm-hmm. This was 1983 or 4, something up in there. And Marcus Belgrave, the trumpet player who played Ray Charles, great mentor, brought a lot of students to that show. And one of them was Rodney Whitaker, who runs the jazz program at Michigan State, and he's, you know, now a great mentor. So I remember that, and I also remember James Carter, is fantastic saxophonist and everything from Detroit. I remember seeing him in Mitch album. You know, Mitch was always talking about his ball game. He said he had a gym in his house. We were talking, boy, they were just talking, him and some of his friends on the radio show, waylaying me. And we went to his house, and damn, he had a gym up in there, man. I was like,
oh, man.
Man, I was scared. And then we played some ball, and we put it on the radio. You know, that kind of stuff I remember all
That's
all
cool.
the years.
That's cool. So along those lines, you know, it's your trip to Detroit, you know, when you're so good at traversing these different genres in your writing, you know, whether it's, you know, jazz, classical, folk music, you know, we played the violin concerto in D a few years ago, which was so much fun. I remember having so much fun on stage as part of the orchestra. That was really, really cool. And we're playing the Swing Symphony coming up, which I'm really excited to play. Yeah. And just kind of wanted to know, you know, if you could walk us through your inspiration for that. You know, how do you pull from all those different genres?
Well, you know, okay, well, you're in the percussion section, so you know, I'm trying to. First, I grew up playing a lot of music, so classical music is not foreign to me. You know, I first played a solo with a symphony orchestra when I was 14. I played in youth orchestras my entire time of playing. I was trained. I took lessons. My father loved classical music. It's not like a foreign, you know, from a cultural standpoint, it's connected to a kind of thing of white and black. Of course, what the generation I'm from, we were segregated. So, you know, from the South, there's a lot of ignorance, but the musicians, by and large, were not ignorant. The musicians were always very different from everybody else in the culture. And I'm saying this to go back to what I think about. I'll never forget, I grew up in really southern towns, man, like Breaux Bridge, Little Farms, Louisiana. And it was strictly segregated. But I remember I saw my father once when I was 7 or 8. We went to some white people's house, and you never did that then at that time. And he played something with a bass player, and at the end they hugged. The bass player was white, and that's also something you never saw. That first you didn't see men hug really, but they were jazz musicians. And I remember thinking, you know, damn, there's something to this, like, because it was so genuine and the feeling between them was so real. Now, it's hard to tell younger people, you know, if you're not from that environment, you don't realize they weren't making a civil rights statement. Like, they were just two people in a room. And it was not a big deal, probably anybody else but me. But that's, to me, that's like what music can do. And they were both accomplished. So it wasn't like, and they had a love between them. So, you know, when I'm writing music, I'm always trying to figure out, what do these things actually have in common? And how can I come up with something that will challenge everybody who's playing it to do something they maybe don't normally do, but they actually have in common? So everything I try to write, if it's for an orchestra, I try to make it organic to what is already an American tradition, and they can play. It's just they're not used to maybe playing that. Now, it's different if you just take with the percussion, because in jazz, the percussion is in the center of it. Whereas in orchestral music, the percussion are way in the back, and they generally don't hold a groove unless it's a march.
Right.
They're generally coloring and making effects and punctuating things, and with the brass section in some kind of way. So right. The function is very different. The challenge is, how can I figure out how to take some people way back there, figure out how to make them play like a groove, but it will go with a person playing up here.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
I mean, I
started,
definitely, I mean, this one coming up, you know, the percussion part very much looks like it could be a drum set part if you put them all together.
that's how I try to conceive of it, because I don't want it to be like a drum set, because I want it to be like a drum set. People took a lot of different percussion parts in American music and they made one person play it because they didn't have the money to pay a bunch of people. All of a sudden, one person is playing 6 things. So that's a great achievement. Now we have a drummer and we can augment it with percussion and we can do the things that percussion can do. But because this kind of American music I came out of, it's got to be rooted in the kind of organic way drums developed here. So I try as much as possible to do that. And with the cellos, because we're playing groups and we're playing the bottom, that's my favorite. I mean, I love cello, you know.
Yeah.
Just when I was a kid at a camp, when I was 15 at the Eastern Music Festival in North Carolina, I was in a room, just me and Leonard Rose. You know, and Leonard Rose was an old man by then.
Yeah.
But you know, then I mean, how many black people were into that? You know, so he of course noticed, wow, there's a black kid here. And you know, we started to talk about it. He was talking about like his preparation and how he gets ready and how he thinks and this, that. He was extremely kind to me, you know, and he was like saying this, that he's from another tradition. I didn't really know who he was until after that. Then after that first conversation, I went and researched him. So I saw him again. He came back either next year or another time. And I spoke with him again. And I just remember just the sound he had, you know, man, it was unbelievable.
Beautiful.
Yes, the sound coming out just. And then, ironically, at that same camp, Eastern Music Festival that year, who came to teach a masterclass was Yo-Yo Ma. And we were saying, man, there's some dude named Yo Mama, you know. So he, you know, but his masterclass, it was riveting. And you got to remember now, he's not that much older than me. So I don't know how old he was. Maybe he was 21 or maybe he was 22. But normally people would be like Leonard Rose's age, which was 60 something. He was 20. And for the whole camp, man, to hear like a person that age play like that and the way he was, the way he spoke, and he maybe he was known, but not, you know, like what he became, but you knew, man, this guy. So, you know, I've drawn a lot of experiences of playing a lot of pieces and just sitting up bored playing pieces and what you don't want to write. Like I tendency, I want to look at my parts and say, man, what I want to play this part. You know, but I wouldn't want to play this. Right. And you know, I mean, and I try to get better as I go along because I never studied composition in that way, which has its good and bad. I asked the composer John Barry once about orchestration. Then maybe I was 28 or something. He said, "Let me tell you something about orchestration, man." He said, "You know how some stuff you figure you're gonna pick up? This is not one of those things." He said, "This is like doing brain surgery. Somebody needs to show you how to do this. Like you ain't gonna figure this out."
Yeah.
So, you know, all of those things kind of work in, but I'm very, you know, I start with for the Swing Symphony, I had a chart of the orchestra. So I was looking at everybody. Like this is where the cello are, this is where the basses are, the French horns are right in the middle. You know, those horns are the key to orchestration in a lot of ways. Brahms understood that.
I agree. That's what I tell everybody.
No, they are, those horns, like if you think about like some horns, they're like the in the woodwind section, but not really in the middle lower of the brass section, kind of up to second trumpet part. They play soft, they play loud, they play bravura parts, they play unison, they play harmonies, they pad things, they give answers. So I'm always kind of, you know, what are my French horns doing? You know, how am I, the spatial layout of them. And each thing has its own kind of, and I try to conceive of it and to give people interesting stuff to play at some point. Because so many people on the stage, I'm gonna give my cello something where they start, okay, well, I got something to play now. I'm gonna give my percussion something where they can do their thing and say, oh, but I don't want them doing that on and on.
Man, I can tell you, we appreciate it. That's no, great.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about it, man. I'm always thinking about it. I got to get better with my horn writing. I was just thinking, I don't have a lot where I really put those horns. I gotta, you know.
Honestly, like one of the memories of that concerto was like just how much fun everyone was having. Like it was palpable on stage, you know, and you know, at the end, you know, we're all stomping. You know, there's a part where we're stomping, and you know, it's like one of those, and it's just cool to be, you know, involved like that, you know, as a full orchestra, and just you know, and I remember the soloist Nicola Benedetti was just. Yeah, she was just having a blast. It was just there's just smiles all around, you know, and that's always a great thing, you know. And I think the audience feeds off of that too.
Well, I believe in that. You know, I don't believe that we don't have to imitate like a certain type of Germanic expression, which I love. Because Mahler said, "Don't clap in between movements." Does that mean we don't have to? We have to not clap?
Right.
Nothing against Mahler. I'm a trumpet player, so you know we love Mahler.
Yeah.
But I know
Trumpets
what
and
you're
horns.
saying.
We-
And we've talked about that here. It's like, if you want to clap, like, I'm glad you're having a good time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And
it's not offensive, you know. It's like it's show that, you know, that you're enjoying it. We love it as people on stage. We love when people, you know, express themselves, you know.
Yeah, we got to encourage that. What I love about what y'all are doing too is y'all have a much greater sense of the community. I like the hall too, where it sits. Man, I played some good concerts in that hall just with a jazz band.
I bet.
And I think it's important for orchestras to be community, more community. All this kind of, we're going to sit down and argue and fight with our management and make sure we don't ever make a record in 100 years for some stupid work rules that nobody cares about inside of a system that somebody has to raise money all the time. Man, we got to get an understanding of how I want everybody to come on me with calls to raise money. Then you get a good understanding of something. Like, hey,
Right.
we don't have to be here. Now, that, of course, does not mean that a management should work people to death and give them 50 million. So I'm not talking in extremes. I'm speaking of just a consciousness overall of the entire institution, that this is a community service that we raise money to do, that we have to put on for the community. And the more we function inside of the fabric of this community, the more successful we're going to be. And this community needs to hear great music. They need to hear masterworks of Bach. They need to hear Beethoven's music. I'm also not a fan of just watering something down just so somebody can look a certain way. And that doesn't mean don't play other people's music, but it means leave the masters out of it. Take all the slots that go to stuff that's okay and give it to other people. But don't, because your calling card in that library is going to be Shostakovich and Mahler and Beethoven. Hey, I can eat some sushi, but I'm not going to get rid of pot roast. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
I know exactly what you mean.
It's really interesting. We were actually having this conversation with our last guest, Laura Downs, you know, pianist Laura Downs, and she, you know, and we were talking about that, you know, just like, you know, what you know, playing the staple compositions, but also branching out and when to do that, and you know, and how often to do that. And it was a really interesting, you know, conversation about that, you know, just you know, how to introduce that music, but also introduce new compositions and artists.
Yeah,
it's all important. You don't have to choose an either or.
Right.
You don't have to choose an either or. You know, it's not.
Right.
But it's couched in those terms because it's turned into a cultural battle of races or sexes, and then once it gets in that battle, man, what side am I on? You understand?
Yeah.
But if you're on the side of music, you have to also realize how many people in Detroit, in the metro area of Detroit, do you think have ever heard of Beethoven's Symphony? Man, come on.
Yeah.
That percentage is so small. Well, I don't want to play the old workhorse, man. When the first time I heard of Beethoven's Symphony, it wasn't a workhorse to me. I didn't know what it was.
Right.
I was like, damn, what is this Beethoven's Symphony? This guy wrote this in 1803. Like, most people have not heard any of Stravinsky's music. They don't know who Shostakovich is. And sometimes it's like we're talking to ourselves, and we have to understand, man, our job is to try to figure out how to get more people into a concert hall to hear what we play best. And watering down the best of your music is not the way to do it. But also excluding people because they're not a certain way is also not the best way. There's a way to put all of these things together with your eye and mind on the fact that you are a community service organization, and you want to have people in your community in there who haven't heard this music before.
Man, I cannot think of a better way to say that. That is fantastic.
Exactly.
That comes with getting old, man. You learn it. Every time you say something that's a problem for somebody. So.
Yeah.
Well,
that's really cool, man. Yeah. Thanks for that.
And I think on that note, we could probably wrap this up. We want to be respectful of your time, but thank you so much. This has been an honor having you. I cannot wait for our performance together, and to have to have the honor of you being
Hey,
recognized.
look, we looking forward to it, man. You know, it's great for me to see y'all. You know, young guys keeping it going. That's important. You know, and thank you for your time and your energy. Much love.
Thank you, Wynn.
Thank you
Really
very much.
appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you're right. Respect.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Wynton for joining us today. This interview is a special. We're dropping this interview as a special in preparation for our Classical Roots celebration. And the gala is on Saturday, March 4th. So if you would like tickets or be part of that celebration, go to dso.org, where you can also find out information about every other concert we're playing this season.
And more of our podcast.
That too.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Wynton.
Bye, everybody.